My name is Luke Walker, and 2 years ago, I decided to decline my dream job offer to move back to Trinidad and join the seminary. Now, what would compel me to make a foolish decision like that? I won a national open scholarship after attending St. Mary's College. I went to Harvard University to do a degree in statistics. I did my master's of music at Berklee College of Music. And I traveled the world performing with orchestras, competing as a national athlete. In essence, I was given the world on a silver platter. But in the midst of all that, there was a quiet voice in my heart telling me that having a relationship with God is worth more than all of that combined. And that if I would only allow God to lead me, my life would be even more fulfilling and exciting and would bring a lasting joy and peace. Now, I'm very grateful that I've been so fortunate to have all those experiences, but even more importantly, that I was blessed with a loving family who handed on a deep faith to me. As a teenager, I remember having a close relationship with God. I would go to daily mass even before school. But as I got my first taste of independence, when I went up to university, I was enamored by all that the world had to offer. And I attempted to chart my own path, apart from that religious foundation that I had. And I kind of wanted God to leave me alone a little bit, so that I could figure out for myself what is right and wrong, what is good and evil. I'm sure that sounds familiar, right? Because it's just a common mistake. Somehow we believe that you have to break free in order to find yourself. You don't end up finding yourself, you end up losing yourself, you end up with plenty baggage. I got in a relationship that I wasn't meant to get into. I pushed God away because I didn't think I needed Him. I was going from one high moment to the next. And after about a year of that, I realized I just wasn't being myself. And I knew there was more to life. It took years for me to overcome the wounds that brief period of rebellion had caused. It wasn't even worth it. Thank God I never lost my faith, but I do think I lost the hope that it was possible for me to be holy, to live the life God wanted me to live. I was trying my best, to restore this relationship I had with God in my teenage years. I couldn't do it on my own. It would take an act of grace to restore that freedom that I once knew. That big moment of grace came at the last year of college, when I had gone through a crisis experience that really turned my world upside down. I was heartbroken. And there was this real tension inside of me. Part of me was really tempted to backslide into that previous destructive lifestyle and go back on all that progress I had made back to the Lord. But there was also a deeper part in me that was so desperate to return to that intimacy that I had once shared with God. But I was really powerless. I didn't know what to do. I was helpless. And the best advice I had at that time was to just surrender it to God. And I just show up every day, every single day in prayer, in front of the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament and with His Blessed Mother, and just allow Him to heal me. For months, little by little, God was winning my soul for Him. And eventually, I passed the point of no return. I had been won over, right? I could never turn back. I felt like I was reborn, like I had new life. And all this came after a low point. And I can't say that it was anything I did. I didn't achieve this growth or this breakthrough. It was all God's work in me as I just consistently showed up every day. Like, God help me, I really can't help myself. I realized that God is really real and that you could really have a relationship with Him. That He really loves us, He really loves me, and the intimacy that He desires to have with me, is worth more than any pleasure you can find. And then, for the first time in my life, I was open to the possibility of priesthood. I realized, one day I just had the passing thought, if I really enjoyed all this time I was spending in adoration and in prayer, then I would probably be happy as a priest. I remember thinking, if I was called to be a priest, I would go and invite all my family and have a big party. I'd be so happy. But at the same time, I'm thinking, no, of course not me. Of course I'm not called to be a priest. Totally ridiculous to think that. But that seed was planted. I lived for 1 year with a Catholic community of young people who did ministry to the homeless. I became more and more convinced that I wanted to live a life completely dedicated to God. These were nice thoughts that were coming up. But eventually, months later, I had to actually make a decision. I had to finally make a very tough decision. After completing my master's at Berklee, I was offered a residency at Harvard that would have propelled me into a career as a jazz steel pan player. It was a dream. I couldn't have dreamt of a better opportunity at that point in my life. It just made sense to do it. And for months I wrestled with that decision because I also felt called to join the seminary. And declining that offer was the hardest thing I probably ever had to do in my life. I even went to the dean to humbly decline the offer and went back home without doing it. I was so scared. But eventually I got the strength and the courage to basically be a man and face that decision that I had to make. You will never have a complete picture of God's plan. Sometimes you want to sit down and say, God, reveal your plan to me. Let me see with utter clarity. Are you calling me to be a priest? And it doesn't really work like that. It's important to keep moving. It's only when you move that you see the next step. So it's only when I made that decision that it suddenly became clear to me, oh, I should move back to Trinidad and join the seminary. It just like clicked. And I'm now in my second year of formation, and I've never once regretted that decision. In fact, I found a lasting peace and an intrinsic internal motivation for what I'm doing that I had actually lost. I didn't really feel that motivation when I was at Harvard even. And I finally found that as I came back and finally decided to do what I felt the Lord calling me to do. You know, the gifts that we are given are not for ourselves alone. The ironic thing in life is that we're only able to truly enjoy what we have when we give it away. We're only able to truly experience these gifts when we use it in service of others. That Harvard degree, you know, my gifts in music, my intellect, my experiences, I know that God is going to use them now in incredible ways, more than I can even imagine. And His plans are way better than the plans I had before. I thought that I was giving up a lot, you know, to follow God's call. This great opportunity, all my friends, this, living abroad, living an exciting life. But already what I've received since making that decision is far greater. When you really think about it, your life is really such a small gift to give in return for all that God has done for you. Just think about all the ways that God has blessed your life, even your family, even your education, your life itself, your body, your health, even the suffering we endure, all gifts from God, and a life is really nothing in comparison. It's not that I love God, it's not that I've chosen to follow God, but that He's first loved me and has first chosen me.